And so it happened that 13 years after the idea was mooted on the floor of the National Assembly, the Petroleum Industry Bill, after many bumps and many hurdles, eventually was passed by the Ninth Assembly. But then, while they're giving themselves a pat on the back for being able to break the jinx, it would seem, there have now been questions because it was not exactly an easy one, as you saw in the report put together by our correspondent there, Emperor Simon. There have been controversy raised over certain clauses in the PIB, but to shed a little more light on what was passed, the advantages that we will seek to reap as a country, what that should do for our petroleum sector, and to also shed light or maybe dispel whatever controversies have arisen as a result of the passage of the PIB. We have with us this morning Senator Abiy Sekibo, who is...
No, George Thompson Sekibo.
Beg your pardon. Senator
Senator
George Thompson Sekibo, who is a member Senate Committee on the Petroleum Industry Bill and was chief negotiator for the southern counterparts to negotiate with the northern counterparts. You're welcome to the program this morning, Senator.
Thank you very much.
And we also have with us Honorable Sada Soli, who is a member ad hoc committee on the PIB and also chairman House Committee on Water Resources. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me.
So finally, Senator, 13 years after the jinx has been broken, but then I'm sure that you have been seeing questions or some misunderstanding arising as a result of the passage of the PIB. First of all, tell us some of the advantages you hope will accrue to Nigeria as a result of the passage of this bill.
Well, the petroleum industry, if we are not able to pass this bill now, we'll be having more complications and more problems. Because from the experts' projections, the next maybe 30 years or thereabout, petroleum product may not be the fancy of the period again. People are going back to different kind of energies to use in their domains. You will see that in some climate, cars have been developed that will be using electricity and maybe gas, you know. So if we're able to fine-tune and properly pass this bill after the conference committees and maybe sent by the president, the petroleum industry will have very good leverage and operate more properly. The IOCs who are doing businesses here will have more confidence because you will observe that for the past number of years, over 13 years, there have not been major investment in the sector because of uncertainty and fears. But with the bill assented to, we believe that most of those investments will come in. We were informed that over $50 billion that was the amount to develop places in Africa, only about 3% of such money came to Nigeria because of fear. Meanwhile, we are the highest producers of petroleum product in Africa. Please.
So the fear happened after the introduction of the PIB.
Yes, after the introduction of PIB.
Assembly.
Yes, earlier when it was first introduced to National Assembly, because a businessman will want to know the stability or will have to forecast what he's going to do, is going to make out of the business he's bringing to this place. And if he's not sure that the law will be in their own favor, then he has options. There are several countries that before were frontiers, but now, today, they are really producing oil. So he would like to go to an area that is much more conducive, much more friendly, much more, a little bit less tax-free, for him to carry out their businesses.
So the uncertainty which hovered in the air, you know, for the oil companies, for the international oil companies, which prevented them from investing because they didn't know which way Nigeria was going. But there was a reason why Nigeria thought up a petroleum industry bill in the first instance. We felt that we're not making as much as we could make from our petroleum sector. And so we thought the PIB was important. What advantages specifically are we hoping that the PIB would confer on us as a country? Do you want to shed a little more light on that?
Yeah, okay.
Well, you know, one of the advantages is it will promote efficient and effective effectiveness in the industry. it will create conducive business environment. Above all, it will help and protect health of persons and environment by the time, and also it will create peaceful coexistence between host communities and the operators, that's the licensees. These are some of the advantages of deregulating the industry, putting the industry out there. Then again, it will create and promote accountability. It will greatly do away with the level of corruption in the industry, because here it's unbundled. The private sectors will bring in their money. A lot of bottlenecks are warned. It will open up the industry to see, for people to see, for investors to come in and participate fully. These are some of the advantages that I can see in the passage of the PIB.
One of the things which it recommends is that the NNPC be unbundled. We had heard about the unbundling of the NNPC before now from previous ministers of state, of petroleum, of the NNPC. Now we are understanding that the NNPC is going to be limited liability company.
Yes.
So who exactly is going to be the regulator of the oil sector? Because we know that before now, the NNPC performed both roles.
Well, you see, the NNPC will be unbundled. It will be NNPC Limited. It will operate like Aramco in Saudi Arabia. It will operate like Petronas in Malaysia. It will operate like Petrobras in Brazil. It will be an operator. It will compete. Now, those that will regulate, there is the commission, which will regulate the upstream. There is the authority, which will regulate the midstream and the downstream. And the authority will report to the minister, and the minister will give general direction, just like normal law that comes into a business. But NNPC will be unbundled, and it will become a limited liability.
Mm. One of the things which I find interesting is that, I mean, consensus did not come easy on this bill. I mean, we still see that there is a disparity in what the House passed and what the Senate passed. And where we've seen that disparity the biggest or the loudest is in terms of what should accrue to host communities. It's even a miracle that they were able to agree on who a host community will be, because we understand initially people thought that the host communities will be where the product is produced. Is that right? But we understand that now the definition seems to have changed to anywhere there is a pipeline. Is that correct, Senator?
No, not quite correct. Not quite correct. Now, first of all, a host community includes anywhere that is production of oil and gas and such facilities. That is the current definition. Now, if that is the current definition, that is the view. Some of these definitions are ambiguous. That is the view people are claiming that, okay, if a pipeline passes through your place, maybe it will be part of a host community. Now, assuming a gas pipeline or petroleum pipeline burst along the line, that will be spilled. If there is spill, I'm sure the people in that environment may also have some problem. Now, we even have another problem, the other host community or impacted community. Host community or impacted community. But for me, for several years, from about 50 years or more, these operations have been on, and the host communities have not gotten anything directly given to them. They have not. This is the first time this attempt has been made, that something is given to them, at least to ameliorate their suffering for all along this period. The issue of two different versions in the bill, House of Reps give 5% and the Senate gave 3%. The joint committee of both chambers agree on the 5%, actually. We agree on the 5%. And unfortunately, in the morning of, again, before the debate, or the clause by clause, the concentration, the Southern Senators Forum set up a consultative body, and I headed it to negotiate with our northern partners. And we did that one, and virtually every person we met, including the Senate President and the leader, agreed with us that we will keep it at 5%. It was agreed. Up till that morning. And I'm not quite sure the reason why they brought in the GMD of NNPC and the Minister for Petroleum, Minister for Petroleum, to address the Senate. And after addressing the Senate, I am sure all of them adduce the fact that 5% would be too much from the operating companies. And I advised that it be 3%. The bill originally came with 2.5%. We were pushing it to 5%. The Joint Committee of both chambers agreed on 5%. In the morning of the consideration, what was in the bill was 5%, not 3%. But somebody got up and made an amendment because it was an agreement I believe they had. You know, they had that money. And you know, the National Assembly, they put the question, and then actually the yeas have it. Other proposals came of adjustment. The Senate President couldn't take it, so I got up to ask for a division of the House. If the House was divided, we'll be able to know exactly who agree for 5%, who agree for 3%. But I was prevailed upon. And, you know, it's a chamber. Chamber has its own politics. If even some of your Southern colleagues are not really showing that much of interest, apart from major leaders from the South that are showing that keen interest. So even if the House was divided, you are going to lose it. Although it would have been better, you lose gallantly than even giving up. But it's a chamber. So after such prevailing, you know, we have to do. But I know that it is not yet a law. We have only passed 2 versions, so it's not yet a law. So the people in the South and the Niger Delta region should relax, because I believe that even our counterpart in the House of Reps are not happy that the Senate took that 3% decision. They are not happy. We have interacted with many of them. So I believe that during the conference committee, we'll be able to harmonize and get a figure. Maybe 3%, maybe 5%. But of course, the hope of every Southerner or Niger Delta person is that, look, this thing should go up to 5%. Whatever reason the operators have, the NNPC have, that if they take it to 5%, it will pose some difficulties for the operators. And they came and gave some figure, 3% of that fund of the operating costs that will be taken is about 206 billion that will come out per annum.
Naira or dollars?
No, 206 billion naira. It's actually 315, no, actually 502 billion dollars, which is translated to 206 billion naira. And of course, you know, when your counterpart hear this figure, they claim that, oh, you're already having 13% on the derivation. You have the NDDC where companies are already paying 3%, and so many interventions. You know, they mentioned the Niger Delta Ministry, Amnesty Department, and all that. They felt that so much is going to the host communities. That is their feeling. But they couldn't realize that this is the first time directly an intervention is being made for the host communities. You know, so I believe that we may have some further negotiation, we may have some further talks, and when the conference committee will meet, I believe that it might be 5%, because we are still pushing, and many of those in the House of Reps are also of the view that it should be left at 5%. I don't know why we are considering much more of the comfort of operators and not the suffering of the people in the Niger Delta region. You know,
there'll be huge questions as to how that, even whatever, whether 3% or 5%, how the monies approved are going to go directly and how those monies will be utilized within the communities. There'll be huge questions, especially when you look at the fact that the local government system is weak. There is no constitutional role for traditional rulers. So who precisely is going to be receiving the funds meant directly for the host communities? But let me quickly ask, Honorable. First and foremost, I don't know if you want to quickly intervene in this 5%, 3% brouhaha.
Yes, you see what played out in the two chambers is just legislative dynamics.
Yes.
The Joint Committee agreed in the draft report to be presented, to be laid before the two chambers. And once a committee lays a report before the chamber, the committee's job is over. It is the fate of that report is determined by the 360 members or the 109 senators. I think what actually played out with respect to the host community funding is basically legislative dynamics. But we still have another opportunity to redress some of these dynamics when we talk to each other. It's normal. It's a normal parliamentary issues. We'll talk to ourselves and we will come to agree. I don't think my colleagues from the South should express any sadness. I'm sure we will agree. Everybody has the feelings of the South. Anybody who has the history, who has the knowledge of what's happening in the South knows the degradation, knows the abandonment of the host community or generally the communities in the oil producing areas. We know the degradation. We know the way they are left alone to their fate. We know that. Every member of the National Assembly, I can say, with this PIB, has a clear understanding of the shortchanging of the people in the oil-producing areas. So I just want to allay the fears of my elder brother that I'm sure we will come to a position whereby the people in the oil-producing areas will smile.
I'm wondering, the definition of host communities has still not been made very clear. I do not know if you heard the controversy as well, because, I mean, Senator also made reference to communities that could be impacted as a result of, oil exploration or pipelines, let's say oil spillage and things of the sort. Are those communities also considered host communities if, for instance, there is a spillage of oil in the communities?
Well, the understanding is the host communities generally is supposed to be a community where there is an oil and gas operations. But that was the idea, that was the argument that was canvassed by some of our colleagues that why don't we say impacted communities? But you see, it's not fair if you say impacted community, where you have a small village or a town where the pipeline just passed by and then it will enjoy the same benefits where a community which their environment is degraded, they cannot have adequate water supply, they cannot even fish, they cannot even farm. And I think we have come to agree that the host community basically should be the communities that are hosting operations of oil and gas or all petroleum operations. That is, I think, they understand. And I think it has come to be agreed that the host community should be communities that are experiencing or that are impacted by oil and gas operations.
And that was what was passed in the PIB.
Yes, no, but you see, that's a problem. When the committees went around for public hearing to get a briefing from the various stakeholders in the various states, those affected canvassed for inclusion of impacted communities. Because some of our colleagues from this part of the country don't know.
From what parts of the country specifically?
Outside the Niger Delta region.
Or rather, those that are not from the oil producers, because we have 9 oil producing states.
Yeah, from the Niger Delta region. Let me call it that way. If you are producing oil in a particular community A, and then, for instance, as gas flare, the gas flaring effect may not necessarily be in that community alone. That's true. It has to go around because gas goes into the air and is carried along. Now, if it is oil, and assuming there is oil spill, and it's spill on the river, it goes to everywhere along the coastal line. So whether you are having equipment for producing oil or not, you have the effect. For instance, in the Niger Delta region, virtually every sea hasn't got any fish again to harvest. You know why? Because of the pollution. So when we're talking about pollution, pollution is not limited to a particular spot, even on the ground, in the air, and on the sea. So it is spread. So the idea is, if you are producing, if community A is producing oil, they have equipment, infrastructure that is producing oil, drilling oil, and maybe gas infrastructure, oil infrastructure. But community C, D, and F that are close to it may have the same effect. That you have, even what you are showing here, there is no pipeline there. But you see, that's something. the spirit from that place, that particular place, will take to several miles away from that area. So we are thinking that when you're talking about host community, you are going to even create more conflict by taking whatever is due and give to these people directly. Because the adverse effect of the operation will affect much more than those who are in the area where infrastructure is erected.
So precisely what solutions have you brought up to, mitigate this potential point of conflict?
Yes. The settlers are to appoint a trust fund. A trust fund. Trustees. And when they appoint the trust fund, they are going to take people from those communities affected. We believe that at that point, wisdom will prevail and they will see some of these communities as part of the host communities. Otherwise, it will cause more crises in the region. That is just the truth. Because we are drilling oil in community A and I'm suffering in community C or D. And they say I'm not impacted. He said I'm not affected. It's not quite true. Secondly, the oil we are talking about may be also in community E or F, but it has to be taken from one spot. So maybe they decide to take it from community A and not community F so because it is oil, it's like water. If you are drilling water and you are taking the water, it doesn't mean you are taking it directly just from the pond where you are drilling it. It is an aqua system on the ground. So you are gathering it from around a very wider area than just that particular spot where the PIB said goes in. So that is our thinking. And I believe that when the trust fund will be set up, the trustees will be able to, with their wisdom, understand how to manage and pacify virtually every stakeholders in the region.
Let's quickly flip this to Lagos now. I understand my colleagues have questions. Gentlemen.
All right, yeah. Well, Honorable Soli, let me ask you this. I mean, there are lots of reactions concerning this particular bill. Of course, you know how dominant that host community component is. But some of the reactions coming through say they're not happy with that 3% to the host community. And in fact, some of the points raised there say that how come that this 3% that will be going to the host community also includes communities where pipeline passes through. That's a pipeline-bearing community. So they wonder that to them, that doesn't sit right.
Well, you see, these are all the nitty-gritties that will be addressed by the trust fund. The trustees will sit down, draw up regulations and rules how the advantages of the 5% will be enjoyed by the host community. You see, the idea of defining, we have not defined exactly how much coverage will be a host community. Yes, like what the distinguished senator said earlier on, the impacted community that is near a producing community, what will they do? I think that issue will be addressed by the trustees. The trustees will be attracted from different communities around the operating areas, not necessarily the backyard of a community that is experiencing this operation, but likely will be done through regulations and through rules. And I'm sure with the way the host community development, host community trust fund is being organized, it will be inclusive, very, very inclusive with even the impacted communities. So I think nobody will be left out in this arrangement.
All right, if I understand your point, are you subscribing to that position that impacted communities should not benefit from that same 3% wherein the host communities benefit?
I think we should not hype on the 3% because we are not yet agreed on the 3%. The 3% is the Senate version. We have the version of the 5% of the House. We are yet to go for a conference to agree on which figure will be printed into the final bill to be sent to the executive for signing. But the idea is, I still subscribe to the fact that even impacted communities should be part and parcel of this host community funding, because look at when you look at the gas flaring, the impacted community near where the flaring is, they're in perpetual daylight. If you have been there, you experience that in perpetual daylight. If you know what is flaring, because flaring will stay there for 24 hours, 360 days, it is there. And those communities under or even 2,000, 3,000 meters away, they'll be impacted by that flaring. So I think they should benefit from that arrangement.
Senator, I think there is a need to clear some things from what you have just said now. So exactly this host community, impacted community thing, there seems to be a dichotomy. Exactly who gets this proposed 3% or 5%, whichever one it is? Is it the host community or the impacted community?
Now, the purpose for the 3% is to ameliorate or solve the problem that is caused by the oil production activities. It's not just a share given to a people. So if that is the reason, then it means that if I am impacted, if I have a problem based on your exploration and exploratory activities, even though you are doing it in community A, I'm in community D, and I'm also having that problem, I should have a share of it. That is my thinking, and that is the thinking of so many people in the South when we went around to get the opinion on the bill. Some states may not even have one oil well, but you'll be surprised that when there is a spill and it's maybe even somewhere in the offshore and the wind drafts it down to the intercoastal line. You may not have oil, but the spill is on your coastal line. So you see that?
Yes, Senator, I get that point.
I agree with the Honorable.
Yeah, I get that point, Senator, but just one moment.
We look at the issues properly.
Well, it's in terms of the disbursement. Let me ask the Honourable. It's in terms of the disbursement that we're talking about. You mentioned the fact that it would seem like the impacted communities are not going to get anything. So I just want clarity on to whom this 3% or 5%, whichever one is eventually agreed to, will go. Is it the host communities or the impacted communities?
Well,
trying to draw from what you said earlier.
I know where you are driving.
Yes.
According to the provisions of the draft bill or the bill now, is the host community. The impacted community is something different, which I believe when the bill has come into force, the trustees will sit down, come up with the regulations. That's not the end of this. Because remember, there could be subsidiary legislation which will address some of the issues that the bill could not have addressed at the moment. And still there is a chance. But you see, the main idea of this is this host community funding will foster sustainable development for the host community, will bring peaceful coexistence between the host community and licensees, and also, you see, will create a framework to support development in host community. So it's so wide, but the idea of not addressing the issue of impacted community, I'm sure the bill, when it comes in force, will address the issue when there is probably the need for subsidiary legislation.
I mean, in other words, essentially, what might be passed eventually might even be way different from what we're seeing now. So this is not all, or this is not the final version, as you've said. But let me take this back to Senator Sekibo and just, explore this. Interestingly, I use explore because it's about this frontier exploration fund for, frontier exploration, as it were. There's been a lot of talk around it because people cast their minds back to when exploration began in Nigeria, the process, and they wonder why set money aside for this frontier exploration fund? Why not just allow companies that want to explore come and invest, and if they get oil or whatever, fine. If they don't, fine. Why take resources from NNPC Limited and use it for that purpose?
Well, I will answer that question, but let me just do a little clarification. First of all, virtually every person before thought that the frontier funds were to use to develop oil infrastructure in the northern part of the country. No. But that is not the truth. The truth is that what are frontiers? Frontier areas are areas where we suspect there is oil, but it has not been developed. All such areas. So the frontier funds will be used for up to about 6 or 7 different places. First, the ultra deep water Niger Delta area. Then the Calabar embankment. Then Anambra platform, Dahomey Basin, Bida Basin, Benue Trough, Chad Basin, and Sokoto basins. Yes, there is the argument that when this fund is released, because there is already some work in the Chad Basin area, it will be taken to much of that place. Well, it's a possibility. It's a matter of those who are handling the administration. But I believe that the fund is a national fund for national issues where we expect oil that is available. The fund will be used for that area. Now, whatever fund that is used for that area is recoverable. It means that if we get the data that there is oil in the Chad Basin, for instance, and then explorers come in to take over, they buy this data from us and pay this money back to the national coffers. So it is like an investment we are making. We are making an investment than waiting for operators to come in, to go and start the research, to go and do the exploration, and to see whether we have oil or not. The country want to do it and keep and sell the record because the fund is recoverable. And when it is recovered, it goes back to the national pause, national pause. So for a country that is an oil-bearing company, what I don't actually agree with is maybe the figure, maybe 30%, maybe it seems a little bit fairly high. Otherwise, I think there's nothing really wrong because they can still be finding more oil also in the Niger Delta region. They are going to find oil in our deep waters. They are going to find oil in our coastal waters where we've not gotten oil yet. In some cities, some communities that were not oil-bearing in 1958, in 1968, are bearing oil now because people carry out exploration activities and find out more oil. Those activities will still be going on. Data will still be collected in the south, in the north, wherever. And if any IOC comes in to explore and advance the oil there, then you have to buy the data that have been collected, and that fund goes back to the country.
From what I gather, I mean, I'm so sorry, Honorable, we're totally out of time. Yeah. But from what I gathered, you said there is still a conference committee to harmonize. Is that correct?
Yes.
Before this is sent to the president for assent?
Yes.
So there's still one more stage before it gets to the president's desk?
Yes.
And you're hopeful that this time around the president will put his pen to paper?
No, he will, because the way this bill was handled, or is being handled, is different from the other
previous ones.
Previous one. Now, in this bill, the executive and National Assembly are working together.
Okay. And it's without prejudice to what was done or accomplished by the 8th Assembly?
Without prejudice.
Yeah, yes.
Well, we have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. We believe that this is a conversation that will be ongoing. I'm sure that even when the president signs, there will be opportunity for another discussion. Of course, when implementation is about to start, hopefully the rancor, which wisdom, you have said that you hope that wisdom will prevail. So hopefully wisdom will prevail. And when it's not prevailing, we hope that wisdom of people like you who saw through the bill will come to play. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Senator Thompson George Sekibo is a member Senate Committee on the Petroleum Industry Bill, and we also had Honorable Sada Soli, who is a member ad hoc committee on the PIB and also Chairman House Committee on Water Resources. Gentlemen, thank you once again for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Thank you.